Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the City of Hudson Public Works Committee meeting, Monday evening, August 14th, 2023. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Joy Knutson. I represent District 3 and I'm a member of the City Council, the Chair of Public Works Committee. I'm going to call the roll first off, starting here to my left, Sarah Brook.
Here.
And Mike Kennedy.
Here.
Okay, our elected council members are all present. We have our quorum. Also would like to introduce to my left is Aaron Anderson McPhee Anderson. Okay. Talking too fast. Is our city engineer. And to my right is Mike Mraz, who is the Director of Public Works and Parks for the City of Hudson. The first item on our agenda tonight is to approve or make any changes to the Public Works meeting from July 10th. Any
Move
comments?
to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign. It's approved and accepted as is. I'm happy to say that we have some citizens present tonight, and this is our time right now where we all offer an opportunity for anyone that would come to address us or provide comments or input to our committee. And we welcome you to please come to the microphone here so that we can hear you and that your comments can be recorded. We also would like to have your name and address, which you can provide by writing on the clipboard or just state it when you're at the microphone. So welcome to come forward, anyone who would care to address us this evening.
Am I up?
Yes,
You're up,
please.
Ross. Hi, guys. Just concerned citizens and neighbors from 3rd Street Hill with the new improved road. The goat trail that it used to be, they used to speed up at that time when it had potholes and cracks, uneven surfaces. Motors still used excessive speed up and down the hill, coming downhill, especially towards the stop sign, sometimes seemed in excess of 60 plus miles an hour. With the new smooth surface, I don't know. Hope they check their brakes on the way down. Anyway, with the neighbors, with agreement, we've got a handful of pages of signatures for some sort of speed control on the hill or signage or bumps or rumble strips or whatever might be used. Thanks.
Thank you. And your name, sir?
Oh, sorry, Ross Freeman, 315 3rd Street, right up the hill.
Thank
Here in
you.
Hudson, Wisconsin.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Is there anyone else in the group that would care to come forward or have, please come right up. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Cheryl, and this is my husband, Rick Cherry. We live at 205 3rd Street, right up the hill. And just to back up what Ross was saying, we've experienced the same thing when we back out of our driveway. It's death-defying. There's people that come whipping around that corner, and now with the improvements, I'm really, really concerned about it. And we hear them hit the guardrail when they go up the hill. They miss, or I don't know what's going on, but the guardrail is smashed. You guys must have seen that for the past years.
Two vehicles.
Two vehicles. So our vehicles in our yard have been totaled. So they come up the hill, they jump the curb, they came into our yard, hit our vehicles and totaled them and destroyed our yard also. So I wanted to share that information. Do you have anything to add, honey?
Yeah, I think we should, the things they're doing, I realize are gonna help the city a lot, and we need the money for whatever, and I think we need to work together on this a little better. Somehow, there's gotta be a way that we can protect our children, and we can still have this, we get the money and build the road and do what needs to be done. But right now, we're not working together. You tried this once before and it didn't work. I don't think this is going to do us a lot of good right now. But I think at least we know that we presented it, and we want to it has to at least be thought about that if not for anybody else, for the sake of our children to come. It's not a safe situation. It's never been a safe situation since we've had the garage out in the road. We keep widening, and parts of the road, they're different widths on the same road. It was designed poorly, and it never will be done, there's not enough room for it to be done properly. So we think we need to really have to put a little bit more thought into what we can do, because we already missed what we can't do. So I think if we try a little harder, work a little better together, we can at least protect our children and the people of Hudson.
Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you coming. Hi.
Carolyn Keys, 101 3rd Street. So I'm just wanting to reiterate what everyone else has said. I think at this point, so what's done is looking good and so on and so forth. But I think that definitely there should be some speed bumps. The speed is really a serious issue. As I've said before when I was up here, there's been 2 cars that have rolled over through the yard, over the wall, down in front of the house. And I went and got to the police department. I have pictures of it. There's still car parts down below there when I go down to try to clear away in the spring some of the brush and so on. I find like car parts. And so it's a very serious issue. You probably don't think so, because sometimes when you drive up there, maybe it's just you or not late at night. But it is. It's really serious, and the speed is a serious problem. I know speed bumps, or somebody mentioned the slats. I don't know what those are, but the
columns. Like
column. I don't know, but it is really important, and I think that it's something. And also, please put up weight restriction and speed signs. I don't know if speed signs really do any good, to be honest with you. But for trucks and big semis, I'd like to see those signs up. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else that would care to come forward?
I just wanted to reiterate what Caroline said. Michelle Barr, 315 3rd Street. I think it's would be an easy thing to do, is just put a speed limit sign with how fast they're going, because it slows me down every time. And as well as weight restrictions, because we've seen these semis coming up and down 3rd Street before the road was repaired. And so I only can think that it would happen more, but yeah, just for the safety of everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak?
I forgot to say something. Can I
Sure.
come up again?
Yes, please. To the microphone would be great.
Did you guys want to go? No, I'm just here to support y'all. But I agree with them.
So one thing I forgot to say too, I don't know if you guys have experienced this ever, but we've been up on the hill for 30 years, and it's always been a huge problem with whenever you're coming down or up the hill, no one's on the right side of the road. No one's driving on the correct side of the road. They're always, looking at phones or doing whatever they're going to do, but it is an issue, and I'm sure I've experienced it, almost been hit head on several times. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We do always have this time period available so that anyone wants to come and bring an issue or address it. Tonight, your topic obviously is pertinent because the road is opening up again after several months of work. We are also going to be talking about a potential traffic calming ideas and concepts. Certainly your street is very serious concern. There's other parts and areas in town where we're hearing this, and other council members are as well. So we're about to have a traffic calming presentation by our city engineer. If you'd like to stay and watch it and then listen to our discussion. Usually when you come with public comments, we don't always immediately address you, but if either one of you would like to make a comment right now, Sarah or Mike, to the folks present.
Yeah, well, no, I think, Michelle, you said that, it may not be serious. It's very serious to us, and that is probably one of the trickiest roads in the city. I mean, I would say that, especially before we redid it, I mean, that probably had kept kept people up at night more than probably any other road. So it is serious, and we have things don't work that quickly, but we have kind of put together that we're going to talk about next. Kind of rather than just let's throw an idea and see if it works, let's do something a little bit more methodical, something we can measure and see if the results are what we need. So so we do think it's very serious. So and there's no magic. I wish a cone or a speed bump would just solve every problem, but as we'll find out as we dig through this, you do one thing and it might have another adverse effect to that. So it's not a real clean method of getting there, but we'll get there. So.
And I would just like to say, I always appreciate so much when people take the time to come and share their insights and their experiences, because it's super helpful as we work to figure out how to better meet our community's needs. I wish there was a silver bullet, which is what I think Mike was referring to. Unfortunately, there's not. I will say this weekend I walked. I wanted to see what the road was looking like, and my first comment to my friend that I was walking with was, boy, that is a beautiful retaining wall, and I really hope nobody hits it. So I share those concerns, and I live not far away, so I certainly have seen the speeding myself, and definitely acknowledge that we need to take some action. And so I know there will be very thoughtful and heartfelt conversation on this tonight, as well as back at the council. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I do want to say, for those of you that saw semis, I witnessed that myself last summer. I was shocked. The drivers were probably shocked too, and I followed them all over town. To say, one man, I said, when he got out of his truck, I said, how'd you like that hill? He said, oh, I said, it wasn't safe for you or the people around you. But I think at the time, Google, we had that storm damage, and so many people were delivering roofing supplies and so on into town. And you see these full-length semis with a load of shingles, and they had a skid loader on back. I mean, this is a heavy, full semi going up that hill. And one of them actually ended up over past Menards. That's where he was delivering to. So why they came through here, but I know we're taking steps to make sure that is marked as not a truck route, and we probably should take some steps to really penalize anyone who uses it that way, because I witnessed that myself, and it's rather shocking because it's not safe at all to have an 18-wheeler on that hill. So I agree with what you said, Mike, about how unique it is. When I first moved to Hudson, I thought, well, it's like being in Europe. You feel like you're in the mountains and Alps or something, driving down that driveway, or that roadway. So it is a unique part of Hudson, and appreciate your being here. And if you are not able to stay and listen to Aaron's presentation, it will be recorded. River Channel's YouTube channel will have it recorded later if you'd like to see more of the information in our discussion. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Aaron, and I guess you're going to set up at the podium.
Yes.
So we can see your slides. Thank you.
Quick question, after the presentation, can we ask questions or?
It's possible. We will have quite a bit of discussion ourselves, so it depends on how our evening goes, but we always like your input.
You're on.
Okay, so this presentation was originally created for the Public Safety Committee meeting, so I am kind of reiterating the traffic calming policy discussion today. So having a traffic calming policy, the benefits are we can come up with a standardized approach to addressing the resident concerns, hopefully back everything up with data-driven results, and kind of have fair and effective consideration of all the proposals from the neighborhood. So some things to keep in mind with when you're coming up with your policy is we don't have any dedicated resources to fund projects that result from the analysis. We do have limited staff capacity to address a large number of complaints. You need to keep in mind emergency vehicle response time, maintenance vehicles, and also traffic potentially choosing to then go to an adjacent street if you come up with a solution on one street. So the overall policy could be laid out as the community members submit applications, we do the data collection, and then we review the data and make a recommendation. And then we have a part of the process where, you know, more neighborhood support for the recommended traffic calming treatment versus just coming up with something, you know, based on one person. And then we come up with a way to implement the traffic calming measures in order of priority as funding becomes available. So the step one to submit an application, there's multiple ways we could look at doing this. We could have an official application to be filled out and sent to the engineering department. And then we can consider evaluating requests during a specific time of year, just to kind of consolidate the efforts. You know, say the summertime is just really busy with construction, so it's really hard to address the comments that come in the summer. So looking at a specific time of year that we can actually address and consolidate our efforts. In some cities, they do have an application fee to submit an application, and that could go towards, you know, funding some actual implementation and just go towards city staff time. Eligible applicants would be City of Hudson residents, business owners, property owners, or city organizations versus someone outside of the city, you know, having a request on a local street. And then the eligible streets would just be local streets only, and that 50% of the land use is comprised of residential. That's specific to New Richmond's traffic calming policy. So here's just some maps of some possible eligible streets. So streets that are not eligible would be considered as kind of your major collectors, arterial roads, which have heavier traffic, and also designated truck routes could not have be part of the policy, essentially. So pretty much any road highlighted on this map would not kind of go towards being eligible to look at a traffic calming policy. Here's just some examples of some application forms based on what some other cities do. And then some data collection. We can record speed data. So we do have one device that we can record speed data, a second device within the police department that we can use. We can have additional enforcement in the area. We would then route the applications to fire, police, public works, and the schools to receive comments. We'd look at traffic overall volumes, accident history, and also pedestrian safety issues. Then we would review the data, so what constitutes a speeding problem that should actually be addressed by traffic calming measures. So the New Richmond traffic calming policy had a few three criteria, and two of them had to be met to actually kind of constitute that there was a speeding problem. And then if there is no speeding or safety concerns identified, then that's just the end of the process. And then we could also look at deploying a temporary solution or just move to a permanent solution. So community engagement, I think, would be a bigger element of it. So we could talk about at what point do we kind of need multi-resident support or need a petition, you know, with the initial application before we look at anything, or after the data collection results and that we have determined a complaint is valid. And just as an example, the New Richmond needed support from like 60% of the affected area. Then project implementation. So once we identify that a traffic calming measure is needed, we could potentially hold a public hearing. We get the support from the residents, and then the big part is just identifying funding. So whether it goes into its own little project a different year, if it can be rolled into an existing project going on in the area, just something to talk about how we would actually fund these solutions.
So for the Parks Department specifically, in our CIP every year I have $10,000 for miscellaneous items. So for like picnic tables or garbage cans that get, vandalized or something like that, so that's something that we may want to consider moving forward, is instead of including it in the operating budget, maybe just have a miscellaneous CIP item in, for these types of measures. So when requests do come in, we have some monies available, because right now, like I said, we have nothing. And when, we identify a reduction, measure, we don't have any money to purchase anything. So that might be one way to think about it. So, sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, no, that's good. Another thing is just how enforcement and education should be part of some decision-making. And then, so the last part of the presentation, we'll kind of go over a toolbox of things that are just identified as some typical traffic calming measures. And then it goes into how quickly you can do them, also the cost of the different measures. And I'm not saying necessarily we would do any or all of these are just options that we could talk about. So pavement markings and signage, that's, one that's more of a quicker timeline, a less cost expensive to do the street pavement markings to delineate the travel lanes to try to slow people down by narrowing the lanes. And then also adding signage. Speed hump, so that's not necessarily just the speed bump, it's a little bit more of a gradual transition where you could do a raised crosswalk. I think most people kind of know what these are. Then we have the speed table, which is also more of the raised crosswalk. I guess there's just two separate names to them. And then the central island or median refuge, so that just kind of presents itself as something in the middle of the road, so drivers have to be more aware of their travel lane when you have a median in place. And it also can provide a pedestrian refuge for people just having to cross, looking one direction, then they can get to a safe space and then look in the other direction. And then bump outs and curb extensions, kind of the same idea as a median. It just narrows the road, makes people more aware, and also creates less crossing distance for pedestrians, so they don't, it's just quicker for them to cross the road. This option, it's where you would present like a mid-block bump out. So another idea is this chicane, which is kind of creating like a curvy road, just another way to kind of make people more aware and slow down. And then a traffic circle, it's not necessarily a roundabout, it's just more of a circle you put in the middle to kind of prevent people from just going straight through an intersection that doesn't have any stop signs, so making the driver more aware. And then there's some options, you could actually go to just a one-way or a partial closure of a road. And then the speed display sign, which is kind of a medium cost element, medium timeline, and it does have some, crash reduction history to it, and then it's pretty easy to implement. And that's it.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Erin. And of course, we have those slides in our agenda packet, and it is also available on the city website if anyone would care to see those attached to tonight's meeting. How do you want to approach this? Should we take some different sections, or you just want to have an open discussion about the, I appreciate for one that it's kind of a sampling of different cities.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're putting forward to say, well, this is what we should do, or this is the only right way, but what are some other large cities like Minneapolis and other smaller towns in our area, how they're approaching this issue? We definitely hear, each one of us as council members, the concerns in town about the speed and the amount of traffic that we're witnessing. So how would you like to proceed? Sarah, do you have a comment?
Thank
Or
you.
question. Maybe
Yeah,
we
thank
should
you.
have question time.
Thank you for, I can imagine the amount of work that went into that to compile them and put it all together and come back with some suggestions or some thoughts anyways for us to have for discussion. Given that you've pulled this together, and I know we're going to discuss it here, and it's gone to public safety already. and I know there's no action on this, what are city staff recommending the next steps be?
Yeah, well, that's what, this wasn't necessarily meant to be any recommendation. It was meant to get an open discussion, at least for the public safety meeting, because, you know, I hadn't heard anything really from anyone about it, so just trying to see what everyone's thoughts were on how we should proceed. The guidelines we kind of got from public safety were develop something similar to New Richmond's policy and start a draft and go from there.
Okay.
So to do that draft, that's why I put together the different steps, you know, to see, you know, if you guys, before I put all this work into something, do you like the idea of an official application? Do you not like the idea of a fee? You know, do you have any other concerns with, I guess, something that I presented?
Shall I? Yeah, I like the idea of, again, pulling this all under a very documentable, here's where you start, here's the next 12 steps, and then we wind up with a solution or a proposed solution. So I like the application idea. I think it gets, you know, like we're seeing here tonight, with these guys and your concerns about the street you live on, rather than just one person say, hey, I don't like what's going on in front of my street, and then it has staff running around because someone saw a speeder. This, you know, again, your issue is more than that. The whole neighborhood's here. So I like that application because it does take people to discuss it. It's not just one person who's got the speeding teenager or whatever. I do like that. I like the idea of a toolbox because not, you know, on some of these we saw, you know, a roundabout or making that 3rd Street hill curvy, that doesn't apply to these guys, but there's intersections that maybe that would. And again, I think those tools all have positives and negatives to them. I lived years ago, I lived in St. Paul, and there was a speed bump in front of our apartment or house or whatever you want to call it, and people would either hear the cars hitting it or they'd slow down and then rev up to get, you know, because don't slow me down. So that's a great example of a speed bump. Sounds like a great idea, but it might actually cause more sound. It might be more reckless driving, or like you say, people are going to go to the next block over because there's no speed bump there. I'm also, I'm going to speak for Mike, but every time you see a speed bump or one of those little bollards or whatever they are, you know,
Delineators.
I'm sure Mike just pictures these drills going into our brand new asphalt, and when it freezes, we're either having to take that out to plow around it, or it's just gonna cause us more problems. So, you know, and as a guy that used to, when I was younger and got a few speeding tickets in my time, the enforcement education to me, just for some reason, that's, I think I've said it before, but North Hudson and we'll say Bayport, people know that, oh my God, if you go 1 mile an hour over, you're gonna get a ticket. So I find myself not speeding in Bayport, not speeding through North Hudson. I don't speed through the city of Hudson. But, so I think the educate and the enforcement, or, you know, flip-flop that, if we do implement some of those signs that say, here's what your speed is, it does make you at least think about it. And if, and I know I've talked to the chief of police about that, and he said, you know, everyone's working with limited staff, right? But, you know, he said, I can write more tickets. If we actually took a position or an attitude of Hudson's going to stop speeders, we're not. It's not going to be a 60 miles an hour up that hill, and if they just didn't get caught once, they're free to do it over and over. To me, I think that has to stay on top of the pile of this toolbox. To me, that we need to. We have the laws, we have it posted. We shouldn't have to backtrack and say, but now we're going to put special colored signs up or flashing this. I mean, you're speeding. So the enforcement, I think, and writing more tickets,
Sure.
to me, is something that
It can happen right away.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say I am in total agreement with that, and I acknowledge I am not on the Public Safety Committee, so, but I would rather look at budget or forecasting and getting greater budget to have additional staffing to start there. And as I looked at the policy options, I liked a lot about it. I have a lot of concerns about charging. I think that's a barrier for a lot of people. And I think that's, while I don't want there to be a lot of unnecessary or, a single complaint, a lot of the other aspects I really liked from New Richmond. About 2 of these 3, I thought put some nice kind of, so hopefully that wouldn't happen. But I feel that's the city's responsibility, and that their taxes should cover those services. But I absolutely would feel full-heartedly about supporting more funds to support greater enforcement.
Well, I would like to comment a little bit about both your comments and my own thoughts as well. One thing right now, as I understand it, if there is a speeding complaint, it might come through a city council member, it might go to the public safety committee, the police chief himself might get a call, a complaint, an email, various ways that it filters through. And again, there have been several public safety meetings that have addressed this recently, certainly one in May, and again, I believe in July. And I see Councilmember Joyce Hall is here, and she's a strong advocate for developing a policy. And there may be a moment for you to contribute here, Joyce. We'll see how our discussion goes. But one of the issues that I noticed right away here with the map, thanks for providing the map, Aaron, was that a lot of the complaints that we're getting are on streets that are minor arterials or collectors. And according to how some of these responses play out, we don't want to do that on those streets. We're not going to put speed bumps or speed humps probably on a collector street or an arterial, just because that is how we need to move traffic in our town. And we do still need to move traffic. We don't want them to move at a high rate of speed. Absolutely, we want that safety. So that becomes, it's another layer of complexity there. My thought when we first started talking about traffic calming policy is I would like to have something on the book, so at least, because we are responding right now, but that at least is written and available so people can see it on our city website. Over the past year, the Public Safety Committee has undertaken and studied various reports from different parts of town based on calls and concerns and so on. And so if that was publicized, I don't want anyone to get overwhelmed by the formal application process does slow people down a little bit, that you have to put your name and write some complaints. It's not just a call that you leave on voicemail at 2 a.m. because a loud car woke you up or something, those sort of complaints. So that it does give some formality to it, and hopefully residents, as you have come tonight and willing to speak and share your name, that is available there, and so we can keep track of. Because I also see that perhaps someone has an issue in their neighborhood and they bring it up through channels and they find out that, oh, guess what? There was a traffic study done in your neighborhood 6 months ago. And okay, I'd like to see the data, or can I talk to my council member, get a little feedback on what's happened. Most recently, a group of residents from the district that I represent on 11th Street between Wisconsin and Cooley have been concerned about traffic flow there, and it's quite close to EP Rock Elementary School. No sidewalk available for children or adults, and they have come to several public safety meetings. There's been the police chief has done some traffic studies to determine what the speed was, and surprisingly, most people were going under the speed limit. There's a certain percentage that are over the speed limit, but not shockingly high. But the difficulty is there's always, when you have someone who's loud and noisy, or accidents are happening in the middle of the night, those draw a lot of attention and definitely give that strong impression that, wow, we have a problem here. So it is helpful to have the data to address that. And later in our agenda tonight, we're going to have a chance to talk about perhaps using some funding, the American with Recovery Act funding to purchase more devices for traffic monitoring, so we'll be able to discuss that further. But I do think that having the data so people can understand and know that someone's listening, that we have done those studies and they've been evaluated and discussed. So that to me is important. I do think ultimately major decisions where we're actually changing the surface of the roadway, building a bump out or something like that, that really needs to come from our professional staff. You know, that can't just be, well, we have X number of people in the neighborhood vote for it, and therefore we're going to do it. You know, it needs to be, because obviously we have regulations and guidelines
Yeah.
that direct us, the uniform traffic.
MUTCD,
There you go.
Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
Do you want to describe that a little bit, what it does, Mike?
Yeah, it's basically a national-wide resource that every municipality utilizes, and there have been countless number of studies by people that are a lot smarter than us that kind of dictate and tell us, you know, where to put a crosswalk, stop sign, so on and so forth. And municipalities and counties follow the MUTCD. There are exceptions where you don't have to, but there is liability that a municipality can take on if they don't follow that for some reason. And if something happens, you know, if let's just say you put a stop sign mid-block somewhere and somebody runs it and gets in an accident, the lawyer's going to look right at the MUTCD and say, why'd you put that there? It wasn't warranted, right? There's got to be warrants that are met in order to put up some type of traffic control devices. So that's in a nutshell what the MUTCD is.
Interesting when you mentioned that, because I also noticed, and I know you were compiling things from a lot of municipalities, Aaron, but there was somewhere where they were describing the speed bumps, that they're not allowed on a hillside, for example. So installing those on 3rd Street Hill is probably not going to be effective or allowed, you know, with general guidelines. So we do have to sort of go to the toolbox, like you were saying, Mike. What else can we do? How can we get people's attention, get them to slow down? I have to say that I concur with your comments about drilling holes in the pavement. It pains me greatly as I come to grips with how tight our funding is for our streets and how much is needed when we drill a hole in the surface of the street. The freeze-thaw cycle throughout the winter. I was out today on 9th Street counting like those delineators that are set up, and each one of them has 4 little bolts or whatever drilled in, and there's 6 of them, so 24 times, you know, that's a lot of holes in our street. And I just feel like that's not a solution for us to do that long term. I know that has been a stopgap that has been chosen, but I think we need to. This is why we have to have this discussion. So we're getting started with it. Sarah, what else would you like to say?
Well, I just wanted to clarify on something with those arterial roads, and I get the speed humps and all of that. So could flashing signs, could you do those types of things though, like with the speed limit?
So, yeah.
Those would be acceptable?
Yes, good point.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
think it is, the not eligible streets are more for like the physical.
The delineators, the speed bumps,
Yeah.
those things.
Sure.
The raised,
That
even the
could be
raised.
Separate, yeah. It could, just the speed display sign could
Yeah, that's
kind of be its own
good
thing.
clarification. And we definitely, those are in demand.
Yeah.
Right now, we
Yes.
have a temporary set, and again, we'll have some discussion about whether we decide to purchase more if that seems appropriate. But yeah, that's a good clarification. It's not that we can't do anything, but some of those major changes to the roadway is not appropriate on those busier streets with more traffic.
Back to kind of Aaron saying before I dive into this, deeply, where what's out of bounds, or whatever. I'm going to agree with Sarah that I think having any kind of fee to it, even if it's minimal, I think the idea of having to knock on a few doors or chat across the fence about, hey, we need to do something about our street here. I think that's showing an investment of someone who cares about their neighborhood. A $50 or whatever is, I don't think that should be on. I'm with you. That's kind of a service we provide. But again, rather than just someone just shooting off a quick letter at 2 a.m. or whatever, you're going to have 4 signatures or whatever our number is going to be. And that process itself, to me, proves that someone cares about it, and they're doing it out of wanting to solve a problem, not just throw a what's my, well, I won't say that. But just getting you guys running around trying to chase down every email we get saying there's a car going 40 miles an hour, go get them. this is basically gonna be, take a breath, let's examine this, and let's do it the smart way, so.
Yeah, so you guys like, you know, the multi-resident at the application before we even do anything, or more after, when we're getting to a point we feel like we might implement something, or both?
I guess off the top of my head, I'd
Like
say as it
application.
starts, I mean, you know, if I'll just keep these guys are like
Third
the
Street
actors
Hill.
on the stage.
Yeah.
You know, hey, what do we do about this? Well, here's the form you fill out, and we need 3 signatures or whatever it's gonna be. And then that's sort of what starts and says, hey, this isn't just one person speeding on
Right.
last Tuesday night. This is a real issue.
Right.
And then from that, and then plus I think you can, you know, if there is the back and forth, we'll kind of have a list of concerned neighborhood people that maybe we want to talk again about. What is the issue? Is it at night? Is it in the winter? Is it parking? Is it not? You know, that kind of stuff. So I think that comes on the front end to kind of qualify the issue.
Like a half dozen people, I mean, just not pinning it to anything, but
Right.
I think it's so hard to, I mean, what would the number be? Because,
I think you go percentage.
okay,
Yep.
that's,
'Cause
that's
other
an
road-
equitable
yep, yep.
way to do it.
Some roads are gonna,
Signatures from everybody here,
yeah,
Yep.
petition to, if you need those, or
yeah.
we've had everybody sign, so with names, email, phone number.
Sure.
address. Or are you talking about the petition online?
I think
Yeah.
so that's really helpful and that's really good. And you might be a very good test case for us. But I think we're thinking like, if we roll this out to the city at large, like what's a way to make it equitable? So some roads aren't as big. So if we said 6, well, there might only be 3 homes on that street or something like that. So it'd be, Mike was saying an equitable way would be percentage. Did I cover that accurately?
Very good.
Sure.
Thank you.
did you have a comment there? I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, there's the,
Yes.
just, because Aaron had presented, you know, some of the calming things, like our.
Would you mind coming to the microphone? Thank you, it's a lot easier. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry. Leah Holton, I live at 430 3rd Street, just across
Okay.
the street.
Thank you.
So my question was, are speed cameras ever used? And because that kind of goes back to your enforcement, like someone knows they're gonna get dinged, or I don't know. And are they like too costly, or?
You mean the ones that actually write the tickets?
Well,
Or you
I know, yeah, the ones that actually get it and then boom, you get a ticket.
Yeah, I think in Wisconsin, those are
I
illegal.
think they're allowed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do believe there is a picture taken of your car. Those monitoring devices do capture the license plate. You know, they're recording time of day, what your speed was, et cetera. I suppose if there was something really egregious or something, I don't know if the police department, Aaron, you have more experience with those
So you'd actually have to
devices.
staff people then to try to quote, get enforcement, right?
Yeah, I think, and again, I think we're gonna talk about some of the hardware that comes with this. You know, so you've seen the trailer that you leave there for the weekend and it says you're going 80
Yeah,
miles an hour.
I've seen those around.
And then there's more condensed ones that can literally just hang on a pole that maybe are a little bit nicer and they're not blocking the whole street. And I think what you're hitting at is, there's some more technology and some of them do have cameras. So I think the police could probably look into that and say, we had again, there's so many different versions out there. But the one, like, I'll just say Chicago, if you go through the, toll without, whatever,
Yeah.
here's your picture, here's your fine.
Yeah, they mail it-
They
they mail
don't,
you the
we
bill.
can't do that in Wisconsin, I don't
Okay,
believe.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but, you know, you throw that up there, you start seeing the numbers come in, it's like a dashboard for their police department.
Yeah, I slow
Say-
down when I see those, so.
Yeah, and they say, you know what, people are consistently doing that, so that's where we're gonna put a patrol officer tomorrow, because, you know, we have them in 3 spots, 2 are kinda normal, this one's the red hot one. So that's kinda how I think tickets would get generated is, hey, we're watching you, and then we're gonna actually visit you, you know, when you're, if you're showing us that speed's getting out of hand, so.
I did hear the police chief mention at a public safety meeting that when they are fully staffed, and if it's possible during, especially during weekdays, there will be an officer designated from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., specifically focused on traffic.
Okay.
I'm assuming especially when school starts and there's, you know, lots of cars near the school areas. Again, focused on hopefully calming traffic, writing tickets when needed. I know what you're saying, Mike, about I think having a police car present at a location a few times, people commute certain routes, they go a certain way. If they see that there, then they may slow themselves down.
Yeah.
Or tell somebody else, hey, watch out, I saw a police car out that corner.
Yep.
3 days this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've noticed in a few different cities, they go with the 60% basically is kind of needed of the affected area, which I guess we would have to determine.
Define that, yep.
Well, and that seemed especially if there was going to be a step taken.
Yeah.
I did notice, I think it was even it surprised me, talk about charging the residents in the city of Minneapolis.
Right.
If they made like a bump out or something, it was charged to the residents.
Okay.
In that neighborhood. It was divided out the
assessed them,
cost.
yeah.
Just like, any curb and gutter or sidewalk issue might be happening. But I do agree that for the application process, I don't see a need for a fee. But I do think having to fill out the form and so on and signing and providing that information makes it a little more solid request for assistance, request for some, what it's going to do, or what I'm hoping our traffic policy establishes, is that when people do have those issues they want to report, then we start that process of monitoring the speed
Right.
in their neighborhood. Maybe several different times, different directions. These devices can be set up. As we've discussed or will discuss further, the ones that flash your current speed, kind of get you to slow down. You see that. There's also something that I call it a black box. I don't know what the actual term, maybe we'll discuss that later, is, but it's more surreptitious. You don't know you're being tracked. And it's just attached to a pole, a light pole. And those are quite accurate for measuring what's really happening because you don't know you're being recorded. So you get that accurate measurement of traffic count, certainly, how many cars, and what is the speed, what time of day are they speeding, things like that can be helpful for planning and for public safety, for policing. So those are both tools that can be useful, and I do feel that at least that application would get something started there. So yes, whether we choose a percent or some number, that is certainly open for discussion. Joyce, would you like to give us any comments? I see you sitting here patiently, and you've been involved in lots of discussions. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Joyce Hall. I'm the District 6 alderperson, and I live on Maple. Anyway, thank you for inviting me up to speak, because, yes, I do have a lot of opinions. I agree that, public safety shouldn't be for sale, that we shouldn't have an application fee, that this is our job to do it. I was really glad to hear that you're really behind enforcing the law, because we do need better enforcement. That is a good deterrent. And you're right, you go through a place that is, we don't want to be known as a speed trap, but yet we do need people to know that we're going to enforce the laws that we've got here, and we can't selectively enforce laws. I think that our traffic calming policy should include the arterials and the collectors in some way, so that we do have some way of adding things, because as you pointed out, we've got, 11th Street is a good example of a place that needs some kind of some work done on it. So we do need to have that included in the policy. And yes, it's not going to be eligible for speed humps. It's not going to be eligible for other things, but we need to use whatever we've got that's available to us. The traffic study that was done on 11th Street, was that done with the black box, or was that done with the sign, the flashing sign? So people were aware that their speed was being collected and that information was being collected. The other thing is that was done recently. I don't know what the dates were on that, but school wasn't in session when that was done. And I know that there's a lot more speeding that goes on all over the city, but particularly on routes to and from the high school in the morning and in the afternoons. Yes, we do need to budget for this, but that's what the budget process that's coming up is for. So Were there any, oh, I like the idea of the application process. And the reason for that is that then we have a tracker. Because, if we're getting an email here and an email there, things get lost in the shuffle. But if we've got a solid application that we have to process, then that produces more of a
paper trail.
paper trail. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I'm getting tired. And I think that, in order to start the process, the application only needs to be signed by, maybe 1 or 2 households. I don't think that it should be a major hurdle just to, call this to our attention. And then we start the process at that point. But yes, before we install anything, that yes, we do need to have that neighborhood meeting and get some more information on what the residents want. But when we've got them coming in as a group, then we know that they want something done. And the 11th Street group comes into the Public Safety Committee. So it's always helpful to know what the residents are thinking and where
They live with it. They
Yes.
see what happens.
Yes.
Exactly.
So anyway, so thank you. Mhm.
Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate it. And it's just good to get these ideas and kind of also just talk. I think it is helpful for the staff to know what's on our mind as council members. And as we talk about it, we may hear more from residents. And again, we're fortunate to have very experienced staff members to help guide us. Thank you, Mike and Aaron, on it and the discussion that we're going through. There's no plan for any action on this step tonight, so let's move on to the next item under new business, which is number B, which is downtown accessible pedestrian signals, the APS system. And this is in response also to an issue that was brought forward to us that we really weren't aware of, perhaps, or maybe some of us were, but there's quite a few visually impaired students, particularly students, because we learned about this from a teacher who came to us that talked about training those students to be mobile and to walk using assistant devices, and that Hudson did not have an auditory signal for them at the traffic lights when they were wanting to use a pedestrian crossway. And so that's why we've been pursuing this. And so Erin has done some research on that, if you wouldn't mind reporting to us. Thank you.
Yep, so as Joy mentioned, we, received some concerns about the downtown signals specifically not having the push buttons. So they're called accessible pedestrian signals, and it's the device that you push and then it'll make an auditory sound. There's kind of different ways you can do that, but it allows visually impaired people to know when they can cross the street and like which direction to cross the street. So we went out, the downtown project, I know there was a recent reconstruction project. They didn't really do much work on the actual traffic signals, and so they did not make these upgrades to the signals. So we have gone out to TAPCO to get a quote on equipment to install the push buttons. And then I have also been in contact with B&B Electric, who could do the actual installation and all the traffic signal work and work in the traffic cabinets. So I have a description here on what they are. I think most people are pretty familiar with the thing that you push and it makes the noise and lets you know when to cross. So the 3 intersections of concern would be 2nd and Cooley, which does have the push buttons. It just doesn't have the right type, essentially. So we would upgrade it to more the kind that says when you can walk versus
Walk,
Yeah.
that message. Yeah.
So that just needs some almost different software as part of it. Then Walnut Street and Vine Street with 2nd Street would need the actual, a few of them we can actually put the button on the existing signal poles, and then in some cases based on the design criteria we actually have to put a little pedestal up, so it'd be a 3-foot pole closer to the ped ramp where someone would push. So not all of them would go on the actual traffic signals. So based on all that, we got a quote from TAPCO for about $25,000 for the APS equipment. We also, I was hearing from some staff that they'd be interested in black signal poles to just make the downtown consistent. So at Cooley, they have all black traffic signals. So I got a separate quote to actually change out all of the existing poles and equipment on the poles, so it'd all be black. And then that would include like the little poles that would be installed, so everything would be black. That's a separate quote. And so that was also about 25,000. And then the B&B Electric for the installation of everything, I've only gotten a verbal quote, so I didn't put it on paper yet, but should be 50,000 max, I guess, for that. And hopefully I would hear from them soon. I reached out to them a few weeks ago, so we should be getting an official quote from them soon, which hopefully then I could present the exact number, at the council meeting. So total with all of that, it would be about $100,000. And we've talked about internally that we could use some of the remaining ARPA funds. On the sheet, I had 300,000. I got an update recently that we have about 250,000 left in the ARPA funds, not 300. So we would take $100,000 out of that. So we'd have 150,000 remaining of the ARPA funds to use on other.
Thank you. Now, thank you for doing such detailed work, because you had to really analyze each corner.
Yes, yep.
So we're not adding any stoplights or anything like that. We are adding the sound indicator at the existing stoplights to assist people in crossing the street. So as you can tell, there's several items here tonight that we might be discussing in regards to perhaps allocating ARPA funds. So we could talk about this in detail now, or wait. Any comments from either of you about the idea of doing all three? I'm glad that you brought all of those forward. Any comments?
I'm okay talking about it all at the same time. I don't.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next item, C, in which we're getting a report about the possible purchasing of speed collection devices. Some of the things you're just talking about that flash the sign to notify people. Mike, are you covering that
Yeah, I'll
for
cover
us?
this.
Thank
I
you.
took this one. I did kind of the research and legwork on this one.
Thank you.
So I looked at two different items. One is the digital speed signs that you saw up on 11th Street. So those were recently purchased by PD to deploy, and couple things that are able to be done through those devices is obviously it's a visual indicator of how fast you're driving, but B, it also does collect speed data. So in the proposal that I had in front of you tonight, I did reach out to the same supplier just to get a quote on how much each one of those costs, and they are approximately $5,100 per sign.
Per sign.
Per sign. And so if we were to go ahead and purchase something, similar to that, I would recommend doing it just because we could incorporate into our current software, and we could all, and B, it doesn't have to be temporary. There are solar options available. And so if we want to have it be a little bit more semi-permanent, there are options available to keep them out there. Now, obviously, we do have digital speed signs already. There's one on Vine Street, I know. We did have one out by Bella Rose, but that one got taken down for the project. But the ones that we currently have installed do not record any data.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no way to
Correct.
capture.
Correct.
It just warns people.
It just warns people.
You're
So
coming
it's
in.
more of a speed display, right? That's the benefit of going with what Chief had recently purchased. It does both things. It collects some speed data, and it also does the speed display. Okay. So just for your reference, the more permanent ones that we already have, that's approximately, well, due to inflation, they're probably around $7,000 now per. Okay.
I'm sorry, the ones that we're talking, not,
The ones that we currently have on Vine Street.
okay.
So at like Vine and Fourth or
7,000.
Yeah.
And that is with a solar
that's a solar.
device? Is that what you
Yep.
recommend?
That's a solar device.
Okay, so that we
It all
don't
depends
have
on the location, obviously, is there adjoining utilities where Xcel Energy can hook up, it's become a lot more difficult because you have to meter it separately, so on and so forth. So solar is probably which way I would lean. Now, obviously, that we
Right.
run into some maintenance issues with, some of the solar options. But it kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at as far as cost is concerned with the speed display signs.
Yeah, so I am confused. So the 5,100 that
Yep.
you recommended and talked about,
Yep.
that is solar and that collects, or that does not collect?
That does collect.
How come it's so much less than the one that's on Vine Street doing the same thing?
Because the one on Vine Street, we have a spec where the pole anchor base, we have an actual like breakaway pole base, you got a large, pole.
Okay.
The pole itself is like $1,200.
Okay, so this is just the sign, and it
Yep.
could be moved from
So-
spot to
Yep.
spot?
Yep, and it
Okay.
could be incorporated on our current sign posts.
I did have a chance to talk with the police chief about it.
Okay.
And he was sharing with me about the fact that it all stores to the cloud and made it very easy to make that report.
Yeah.
Which he provided to Public Safety about the 11th Street.
So that's how we collect 11th
Recently,
Street.
right, that it was very easily compiled. It didn't take a lot of time and energy for him to analyze data and so on. I think if I'm looking at this right on the itemized page that you provided, Mike, it's $1,500 for their traffic suite, which includes Premier Care and reporting and so on. I don't know if we had multiple devices, if we'd get a better price from them or
It
not.
might be something worth looking into as
Never
far as
know.
it, yeah, yep.
But at any rate, if we had, so in other words, this would be a device that right now, our police officers seem to be the ones that are moving it. I know engineering staff has done it in the past also, but setting them up on a street where it's time to see what's going on there. We've gotten some speeding complaints. Sometimes they'll show one direction for 4 or 5 days and on the same street, flip it to the other side so they can monitor traffic going both ways. And the nice part about it is that it is recorded. But it does also help slow people down, but it does not have that sort of hidden effect of catching people when they don't know they're being recorded. But they're effective. In many people that have it in the neighborhood say, oh, we really appreciated having it there. And the key part right now is that I thought it would be helpful, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion tonight, is if we were able to purchase at least another set that gives our police department more tools to respond to issues that are brought forward, complaints or any applications for traffic studies that might take place. And also, I'm just happy to really see that it's easy software to work with. So anyway, you had another device to tell us about.
Yep, so then the other device that I got pricing on was the Armadillo traffic data collector.
Is that what I'm calling the black box?
That's what you're calling the black box.
Okay, thank you.
So this one does not have the speed strip that goes across the road. This is all digital camera. And so basically, like Joy had said previously, you mount it on the side of the road, inconspicuous. You get a more accurate data collection of what the traffic is actually doing. It's battery operated. There's some language or some, what do you want to say, brochure in the packet that kind of breaks down how long they last, so on and so forth. But anyways, each one of those units was $3,315. And so it can collect bi-directional traffic. It can collect traffic, like going two lanes one direction. It can't go three lanes. So we couldn't put it out on Carmichael for,
Right.
and collect that traffic data. But for residential streets, this would be a perfect solution, and it's easy to install. You don't have to worry about the speed strip going across the road,
Yeah.
so on and so forth, getting run over by cars and getting attached, and we have to go out there and maintain it all the time. So,
Is it
it's-
have we ever had any issues with like any of these boxes being taken?
Nope,
Okay,
nope.
We do have a lock, the one.
okay,
Yeah, you
Yep.
can lock them up.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah. And I did get the rugged carrying case for this where it is locked up, and so people can't just swap them.
Someone
Swipe
tampers
them.
with it, it might.
Right.
Yeah. And now, if I'm understanding right, also in the conversation with the police chief, has the current black box Armadillo system that we have been turned over to your department?
Yes,
Or-
yeah.
Do you find that one still useful, or is it kind of outdated? Does this seem like a much better system?
The armadillo one?
Yes, in other words, to compile the data that you might need from it.
I don't know, I guess the difference is if this isn't the exact one we have, Mike.
No.
If it's something different. So I would have to see maybe what the comparison is.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, we've had that black box traffic counter. Well, I've been here almost 6 years. I mean, it does the trick. It's what do you want to say, spits out data that is confusing and needs to be reconfigured.
Yeah,
where-
we do, yeah.
Yeah.
If this already does it, that's,
This already-
that's definitely nice.
this already
Yeah,
does
if
it.
it already,
configures it and
yeah,
already
that's
spits it out.
nice.
So
Yeah.
you're
Looks
saving
like
on
it's a
staff
white
time.
box, then we can
Yeah.
call it the white box.
Yeah.
Great.
Interesting.
But yeah, I like that, definitely would make it a lot easier.
More user-friendly,
Yes.
perhaps,
Yes.
because of, right, the
Absolutely.
processing the data and
Yes.
make it into a understandable format for
Yeah,
lay
that-
people especially.
That would be nice.
Okay.
And just, I want to confirm, it says weatherproof on there, but I know, for example, when we got our parking meters downtown, there was some solar stuff, so we had some issues with it in the winter. Is this really equipped for winter in Wisconsin?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So the speed collectors are battery operated. So the armadillos are all battery, they're not solar.
Okay.
Right.
The speed display signs that we talked about previously, those are solar powered. And we need to pay attention to where those are installed, obviously to get some
So
type
they
of
don't-
charge throughout the
yeah.
day. If it's a location that doesn't have that available, then we would either have to look at battery operated or direct powered,
Okay.
I-
Or the speed wagon.
or the speed
Sure.
wagon, right?
So on the issue sheet that you prepared, Michael,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, page 41 on our packet, it says, last item for $557, something about a mounted battery kit. Does it come standard with a battery, and if we wanted to, we could make it solar, or is that your expectation that we would set these, again, these are temporary, not the permanent ones. I'm trying to keep my
Yeah,
thoughts
so
straight
I
here.
mean, it'll have to be, okay, so it is confusing, right? So you have,
Yeah.
we could have a temporary option that is battery powered. That's what the PD just purchased. And that one we would be able to, if we have a speed issue on 9th Street or 6th Street or 7th Street, we could put that out there temporarily, battery operated for 3 weeks, right? We'd have to come down, recharge, put it back out, so on and so forth, okay? So that's one option. That one could be deployed all over the place. The other option is to have something a little more semi-permanent for residents that go through the process, and it's identified that a speed display sign would work here, and it would be beneficial to put it here. We would look at installing more of the solar powered or the direct current power, okay? So those are kind of the two buckets that we have. So it all depends on what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, there's different applications for each device that we would be purchasing.
Good point. Thank you.
And I did not get a price on, well, talk amongst yourself, I can look back at email. Jeff had sent me what those cost, just the battery powered
Sure.
ones.
I know the residents of the 3rd Street Hill did bring that up last year when the project was being designed and planned, as could we have a flashing light there? And, yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure. Again, I'd always want to have a permanent one. If we were to go to a permanent one, to have our professional staff really evaluating, is this helpful here? Or does it just make us feel good? Because we only have so much money to spend. We want to spend it carefully in the city in lots of areas of need. So we want to make sure we identify those areas. My initial thought right now was that I do know that last January, the full council voted to allow the Public Works Committee to make some selections of how to spend the remaining ARPA funds, which at that time was around $300,000. Some of it has been allocated for different purchases. I guess there was a camera system at Lakefront Park that we, purchased due to vandalism, things like
Surveillance,
that. Pardon me? What's that?
Surveillance, yep.
Yeah, surveillance camera. So there were a few things like that, but the ARPA funds do need to be allocated or spent within the next 12 months or so. I'm looking.
It needs to be,
Next year, maybe?
it needs to be allocated towards a project.
Okay.
Yeah, by the end of 2024.
Okay, so we have a little time
Yep.
there. But I just thought, well, this came to mind that as you were commenting, Mike, about the Public Works budget, when there is a problem identified, oftentimes it might be Public Safety Committee, and the word comes down, they want a sign or something new needs to be put somewhere, you don't necessarily have cushion in your Public Works budget. It's pretty tight in terms of sending a crew out and putting those sort of signs in, especially when we talk about a sign like this, a signage. So it was my thought that perhaps by purchasing at least some that could be set up temporarily, we could help our police department monitor, do the collecting of the speed data and traffic data, and also take a little burden off of the Public Works Department with having to purchase and getting those out of our operating budget is difficult.
Right.
So I'd like input from the rest of the committee. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like, I mean, this is showing that we are committed to addressing this. I think that, do we own one of those speed wagons or whatever, REO speed wagons?
Yeah.
I think that's a neat, I mean, those are, to me, are kind of like a little bit prehistoric, and it's like, oh, it's gonna be here for a couple days, and it looks like we're just kind of dropping something throughout this, at least, again, me as a driver, I take them seriously, but this would be more of we actually have a plan here. We have a toolbox. This is one of the tools, like we're saying. But then doing something with that, so I do love the idea that this is going to go into, some sort of software that we could go access and say, it is the high school kids, or it is the, whatever. And actually just, back to a paper trail where we can actually go back, and when we have citizens that say, nothing's getting done here, we would say, well, here's where we're at in the process. This actually is so much better than just a sign saying, hey, you're going too fast, without any other teeth in it than just a quick flash. And the other thing too, again, if it'd be a commitment from the police department, Public Works, and Public Safety that, hey, we are going to take that next step. We are going to be more actively patrolling, both electronically and, a patrol person there. And the ticket book's going to come out a little bit easier. I think this is all one, these aren't siloed things. Let's put up a sign and walk away from it. It all has to work together. We're proposing to spend some good money on these types of items. So we have to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable and use that information to reduce speeds, reduce accidents, things like that. So, and do we want to talk about should we bounce around, or are we just talking about these signs right now?
No.
And I also think
ahead, yes, go ahead.
the pedestrian signals, I think that's a must. To me, it's sort of a promise we made. That is a busy intersection. I know when Dean was here, he explained that, the state sure didn't go out of their way. They didn't have to put anything in.
Right.
It's on us. We are becoming the place where we're a destination. People are parking their cars. There's people walking back and forth that street. I also like the idea of the poles down there all matching. So we're not hodgepodgey. So, is this where we bite the bullet? And if it could be included in the ARPA funds, it's a nice way where we're not just pulling it out of another budget. So, quick question on those: are there, as we talk about in the future, possibly more residential downtown? I know if you're downtown Minneapolis, you hear those things: don't walk, stop, or whatever, and the beeping or whatever. Do we ever have any concern? Do those get quieter at night? Are we gonna turn ourselves into a city that sounds like downtown Chicago with beeps and voices throughout the night? Or
I don't know how to answer that exactly. I think some of them, the volume can be controlled, and I'm not sure if they auto-control based on the traffic noise.
Okay.
So if there's not a lot
Yeah.
of traffic, then I think it is quieter. I'd have to double check if this specific one does that, but I know they can do that.
okay,
It's
I mean,
only
it's a
two
balance.
intersections.
yeah.
I don't know about that. And how many residential
I was thinking
locations are at that intersection?
I think it's a little bit further away
Right,
from where
yeah.
they're thinking that apartment building, if it moves forward.
Yeah. That's a good point. What do you think about the
Oh.
idea of doing all three of those intersections? Do you feel like if we're going to do it, we should do all of our crosswalks like that? Or our
The main
traffic
light,
light
yeah.
controlled crosswalks? Thank you.
Well, I will happily
what do you
answer
think?
that, and then I do have some additional
Sure.
points, but I'll answer it and then let Mike share his opinions. Yes, if we're going to do it, I think we should do it right the first time,
Okay.
is my opinion.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that that's, where, you know, if we back one off just to save a couple bucks, where would that be? I think it's,
We're bringing in the electrical firm, et
Yep.
cetera. They're going to be here
yep, I
committed to
think we do it
working.
right, and those are those are the three, you know, no-brainer intersections that people would be crossing at, so.
Where we have a traffic signal. Okay.
And we have the power, we have things prior to us, and I acknowledge that this is easy to say when you aren't living in that spot, and I'm sure people will say that about us who come after us, but some of our track record has been penny wise and pound foolish, and so I don't think this is a time that it makes sense to be penny wise.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, questions I have. One, ARPA funds, I had been so hopeful that perhaps we could use those for some of our other infrastructure related to roads. So I'm sad by that, but I acknowledge that this is desperately needed. And those are hard decisions that have to be made, and I do think these are priority issues. Nonetheless, I'm very concerned about our roads, as I know everybody sitting in this room is as well. Question for you, Aaron, if I may, with respect to the estimates that you got, did you do an RFP process, or do we have multiple people that came forward, or is there only one option
Yep,
really for
there's
us?
only, for the equipment or for the installation?
Well, let's say both.
I would say I think TAPCO is just a very well-known company out there. I would have to check what other companies could actually provide the equipment. And then there are other electrical companies I could get quotes for as well. I think we've just worked with B&B Electric before.
B&B had the contract for the Second Street project. They're the ones that did all the utility lighting down there, so it just made sense to contact them. But
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
there
something that
are-
we could.
Yeah.
In regards to TAPCO, 99% of our equipment and all of our traffic signals is TAPCO.
Okay,
Yeah, and so we want to keep the same supplier because it makes
Okay.
sense, yeah.
okay, so that was one question I had. And I think that was really the bulk of my question. I feel very comfortable. I totally affirm getting additional signage on, that you've proposed, so.
Okay. So the sign, the display signs, the speed display signs, just for my clarification, are you wanting to get battery powered where they can be moved around, or do you want to get semi-permanent where they stay in a location for a number of years? Or do you want to get both? And how many?
Each one is 5,100. No, the movable ones are 5,100.
So the ones that are semi-permanent, the solar powered,
Yeah.
those are 5,100.
Right?
So I look back at my emails, the one that Chief Willems had purchased, they're the 15-inch, so I got the 12-inch Kodak. He has the 15-inch battery powered.
Okay.
And those were, timeout, I want to just make sure I say this correctly.
Okay.
Because I'm on. It was, let's see, 58 plus 800, $6,600 for the 15-inch battery powered.
And that's just a bigger size?
Bigger size,
for more
and
visible?
the battery costs $800.
So it was 6,100?
66.
66,
And
sorry.
how many were you proposing that we get? You just
I
gave
was
us the
open-
price per
Yeah,
one.
I was just, I don't really, I mean, obviously, we all kind of know the general speed issues that we've all been dealing with the past couple of years, so I mean, yeah, I'm open to suggestions, put it that way.
Right, and this, I mean, we may not come to a final
Yeah.
decision
Right.
tonight. We
And
might
that's fine,
not.
yeah.
I do think, my initial thought was that the police department could at least have another flashing one to collect this excellent data, and they last for 5 to 7 days, I think, with the battery charge. And then they have to go out and either swap batteries or bring it in and charge it. I'm not sure what they do. And they usually end up switching it to a different location. You know, it's in one location for about a week. 5 to 7 days, gathering data, getting people to slow down. And I just thought with the amount of concerns we're hearing in our city about speeding, that another set, at least one more set would be helpful. So going the next step of purchasing some, I don't know if we're ready to, I appreciate all that background on those permanent ones to help us understand that. How are, I mean, to you, both of you, as far as guidance for where would we put one at this point that is permanent? I mean, as the city staff, you've made those decisions over the years. We don't have to wait for a traffic calming policy, but
Right.
it's a tool for part of it.
So, a couple things. Whenever we're reconstructing a road, so for example, next year when we're reconstructing Vine Street, the remainder of Vine Street, we're gonna be looking at, pedestrian accommodations and looking at, speeding, traffic volumes. And so whenever there is a road that's being reconstructed, obviously staff is gonna be looking at ways to control, speeding and make it safer for pedestrians, whether it's RRFBs, speed display signs. So that aside, what I would recommend is the data collection, the white boxes on the poles, right? I would recommend that the city would purchase like 2 of those units, okay? Because we're gonna have, if we go through, in which we will, and create this traffic policy, right, speed policy, that Joy has been working on for 3-4 years. I can't wait till this is done and into bed, Joy, I tell you that, it's gonna be great. Joyce, I'm sorry, Joyce. Joyce. I'm sorry, Joy.
That's all right.
But, we're gonna have multiple requests coming throughout the community, and to deploy, have the opportunity to deploy the speed data collection is going to be vital for the staff to collect that data and then make the recommendations, right? So I think 2 is manageable.
So yeah, that would bring us to 3 then, that we have as a city,
So we would have the black box,
and 2 white
then the
boxes.
2 white boxes.
Okay, so
Yep.
total of
Yep.
3.
Yep.
Black
And I
data
would
is
probably
that-
primarily only use the
The
white
white ones.
boxes. I would
Okay.
almost look to offload the black box
Yeah,
somehow,
me
some
too.
way. It's just, it's cumbersome to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you felt that, I mean, do you get significant data? I mean, that,
It seems
how
like.
much work is it for you if, let's say, the police chief says, well, yeah, that flashing light is helping those high school kids see that light and they slow down, wherever it might be or whoever the drivers are. But then they say, well, let's run a surreptitious study. Is that a lot of work to get the data off of there, or the current black box that we have, you said doesn't spit it out as easily?
No, it doesn't. It's just kind of like raw data and you have to compile it in a spreadsheet. It's where I think you're just referring to the white boxes, which are still inconspicuous. So instead of kind of using the black one, we use the white
armadillo.
ones. now.
Armadillo, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, all right.
So we just still use the inconspicuous armadillo to get the data.
Right.
If there's like a lot of complaints, I like the idea of just using this when we get a complaint. I know it does sound like the police department uses the other one a lot.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with 2 seems like a good number. And then for the actual speed display signs, to me, like those as more of like, we can put them up as permanent solutions. So when we're looking at a number of them to purchase, let's assume we use one and will we stay there? And then it's still nice that it collects the data throughout time.
Right. And then on a lot of streets, you're looking at bi-directional traffic, right? You have one on one,
Right.
one side of the street, so
Right.
you're looking at,
Right.
$10,000 to $12,000 per street, right?
Yeah, and there's a few specific spots I feel like we could probably implement a few right away, without going through the policy, and then it would be nice maybe if we have the funds now to have a few on hand. At the same time, we don't want to go overboard
Right,
and then
have
have a bunch sitting around.
Right. So you might get outdated, new technology.
yeah,
or
right.
new software that's not compatible or something.
Yeah, and it's nice still to be able to, if it's a one where we have a project like Vine, we just rope it into the project,
Correct.
versus having to do
As
this.
part of that, yeah, that's a good idea.
Correct.
When the project is designed.
Yeah, right.
That
and
point
just-
is valid, certainly, and I know the residents know that on 11th Street.
Yeah,
That they will be
right.
getting, there is a grant and a process in place for redesigning that segment of the street, and, perhaps something can be incorporated at the time. I mean, I know they are asking for some help and relief right now because they feel with the children and no sidewalk that it's an issue. But yes, as we go forward, we're going to want to get those built into projects as much as we can.
Yeah.
Installation and everything is easier.
Right.
If we install it during the project.
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing, in an ideal world, it would be getting 2 of the 12-inch speed displays and everything that's part of that package. Each one of those is $5,100, so that would be approximately $10,350 approximately if we got 2. And then 2 of the white boxes, the armadillos, that would come to $7,000. So we're looking at $17,350. Is that correct?
I would say even, I don't know, more than 2 for the actual speed detection, the ones that show your speed.
Okay.
I don't know, Mike, if you think we would want more than 2 at this point.
Well, I'm just trying to think through the process here.
Yeah,
The first step in the process is to collect the data.
Right.
Right. We want to know what's going on in the streets, right?
Yep.
And then based on that, whether or not they meet the thresholds that we put down in the policy, then we would go to the next step and purchase, more semi-permanent solutions, which would include the speed display sign. I like the fact that they are inconspicuous and you don't have drivers changing their driving habits because they see a speed display sign.
Yep.
You're getting a more accurate account of what's actually happening on the road. So with that being said, 2 white boxes, for sure, right?
Okay.
I don't know if it makes sense to hold off on getting any actual speed display signs until we collect the raw data.
Right. I see where you're going with that, yeah.
I see where you're going with that too. I'm thinking we have the ARPA funds now, and
Yep.
I'm thinking they could be designated to something else.
Yep.
And that maybe it makes sense to have, if you don't want to do 2, at least 1 on hand so that you're ready to go. I mean, right, because we know there's going to be a need, right? Someplace
yeah.
there's going to be a need for the sign.
2 of the white boxes.
2
Okay.
white box, here's
And those go for
30.
500.
yeah, roughly 3,300.
So $7,000 for 2 white boxes, armadillos.
Okay, and are you suggesting don't purchase the flashing?
No,
right now?
I'm thinking we should do the flashing at this point. 'Cause
Maybe
I-
put up, semi-permanent or permanently, basically.
Right.
For
Yes.
Well, if we purchase too many of those ones, the police officers will be running around town constantly. I don't want to make extra work for them, but the fact that they could be, they do seem to have some traffic calming effect that could be used. And I know neighbors appreciate it. It is a helpful indication that we're listening and trying to respond to their concerns. So having at least another one available. Now, are you suggesting the chief got a different size than what you?
Yeah,
on your
he
quote?
got the 15-inch
So
and I
should we-
had the 12-inch.
So it doesn't matter what kind of post it goes on or any
No,
software, it's just
no.
how big it is?
How big the numbers are, yeah.
Thank you.
So are you thinking that we should be consistent with what the chief did?
As long as we're buying it from the same company, All Traffic Solutions, it's going to be compatible with the software, whether or not they're bigger or smaller. I quoted the smaller ones just because in the photos that you see in your packet, I like how they look underneath the current speed limit sign.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So that's why I quoted the smaller ones. So on it'd be page 45, the middle picture.
Yeah.
You got the posted speed limit, then right underneath it, it has your speed, 34 mile. I like that. And that's the smaller sign that I had quoted.
So you anticipate it would be fine? It
Yeah.
would be
I think
interchangeable?
either way, you'd be
Yeah,
fine.
getting a slightly smaller one. If we get different feedback from the police department, we could
Yeah.
respond
Yeah.
at whatever is suggested.
Well, would we like a motion then? Is that where we're at? I mean,
Yes,
do we have more
and we can
discussion?
do them together if you would like, or we could do 3 separate motions.
What would
I'm
the,
open to whatever.
Aaron and Mike, what would you prefer? Mike Moraz as opposed to Mike Kennedy?
If you want to do a separate one for the, APS, and then maybe a separate one for the,
Correct.
Okay, sure.
speed display.
Okay.
Just getting back to the,
Okay, I'd be open to
Sure,
a motion.
I'll make a
but-
motion.
Yeah, thank you.
To implement the downtown accessible pedestrian signals system. Is that too many systems? For all 3 intersections identified.
Okay,
Funding from
and-
ARPA? With funding from ARPA?
With funding from ARPA and including the signal poles update.
okay. To the estimated $100,000
$100,000, yep.
expenditure. Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, and it's been seconded that the city will use ARPA funds to purchase the accessible pedestrian signals for 3 different intersections, and the cost will include upgrading to black poles and the electrical work to the sum of $100,000. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. That motion is passed. Thank you. I think that'll be a good safety addition. I'm very happy about that decision. Okay, want to tackle the next step?
Well, and I just wanted to confirm and I understand that I'm happy to put forward the motion, but was the consensus that we just want 1 flashing sign, or did we want to do 2 flashing signs at this moment?
So here we go back. So the police have 1,
Correct.
and then we have the trailer. So we have 2.
Do you know if the chief has been deploying the trailer much, Joyce, I haven't seen it around town very much. I don't know if something's wrong with it or it's just too,
I talked to him recently. He made it sound like, I don't know if specific to the trailer. It sounds like they put it out, they rotate it around a
Okay.
lot. And
Okay.
Is this, okay?
They may be putting it on side streets too, where we don't even see it.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
yeah, he makes it sound like it's being moved all the time.
To me, it's, do we get 1 and then wait to see? I mean, do we identify a location? I think we have the 3rd Street Hill as earmarked as, that could be a location.
Right.
I don't want to, a warehouse where we have 12 pack of them where what are we doing these?
I will say there's another spot, Bear Drive, that could probably, the residents were even willing to pay for it themselves. So that's another location. So right there's already 2. We could potentially put a permanent one up.
Yeah. So with the temporary, what I don't want to have happen is, let's just say, for example, 3rd Street Hill. We put one out there as a temporary. 2 weeks go by, we take it down. All these lovely folks are
Right.
going to be calling, what happened to the speed display
Where's my
sign,
sign?
right?
Right.
So I don't want to get into that trap.
Right.
Yeah, I'm for doing 2 then. I mean, it gives us a lot more flexibility than 1, obviously, but I mean, we could also leapfrog them around. And again, to Joy's point, we don't need 19 of them because then we're gonna have to have staff, full-time jobs switching signs out. But again, which will come with, as the policy moves up the rank here. I wanna tie it, I don't wanna just hang the sign up and say, there, we did it. Not only use the information we're gonna get, but then, again, through the newspaper or Facebook or whatever, however people get their info.
Yeah.
That we're taking a different stance than we might have done in the past. Again, the police chief's gonna have to comment on that so if these are tools that I'm willing to invest in, let's use them the right way and what they're designed for.
Could one of these signs be a permanent sign so we wouldn't have to move it, or would we not do that because can you get a different flashing sign that doesn't collect the data if it's just going to stay there, and is it less costly?
I like keeping the sign from All Traffic Solutions because it does collect the data.
Okay.
And the reason being is, let's just say, it's downloading that data, right? And all of a sudden, a resident calls the chief and says, we have a speeding problem. He can look at that data that's collected on that street.
Yeah.
And he can basically utilize that to say, tell his staff, like, yeah, look, we're getting speeding from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Why don't you go sit out there, and.
Okay.
So utilizing that data collection software with the speed display signs is such a benefit to the
Okay.
city. I don't think I would recommend buying one without it.
Okay, so one of those, if we did 2,
Yep.
one could potentially be a permanent solution, and one could be movable. If
Yep.
potentially, I know we're not committing to anything, but so this could be movable or it could be permanent.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And it gives us the tools to be ready to move forward
Yeah.
as the council does make a policy, a traffic calming policy, and a way of gathering that data. So it's flexible. There's options for us.
Yeah.
So I like that.
All right. I move to purchase 2 shield radar signs that are 12 inches, as well as 2 armadillo boxes using the unallocated American Rescue Plan Act funds.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second that we'll be purchasing with the American Rescue Act funds that have been still remaining designated to the city of Hudson. We'll be purchasing 2 of the Armadillo white box systems and 2 of the flashing shield radar speed signs that can be used for data collection and slowing traffic. So all those in favor of the purchases of 2 of each of those, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We've passed that motion, and I think that will be money well spent. I'm pleased with our thought process and decision-making here, as the other funds that were allocated to the city have been spent on unique or maybe one-time purchases rather than just normal expenditures. It is true we have lots of street work that needs to be done, and there is still some remaining money that could be spent or help finish out a project as needed. So but this is a way to move forward some policy concerns that we have by giving tools ready for our department heads to work with. So thank you for that. Our next item, the final item here under new business, is the Complete Streets Policy.
All right, so this came out of the Bike and Ped Committee, and it kind of ties in nicely to what we've been talking about up to this point. A complete streets policy is basically a policy that a city adopts where during any type of road reconstruction projects, city staff, council, consultants are looking at an overall view of the corridor that's being reconstructed and incorporating any off-street accommodations or on-street accommodations for alternative modes of transportation, whether that's, wheelchairs, motorcycles, bicycles, people walking, Mike's e-bike. And so it's basically just a document that signifies that the city, when these opportunities are presented, that staff will look at the whole project as a whole and incorporate any type of off-street accommodations as when they're warranted. And so the policy went back and forth at Bike and Ped Committee. They made some various changes, tried to cut out some of the staff legwork that needed to be done, because according to the policy, the city engineer or public works director has to come to a council meeting on an annual basis and give updates on, how many feet of sidewalk was added, how many feet of sidewalk was repaired, trails, so on and so forth. So we want to try to keep that as a minimum. But overall, it's, when I was in Richmond, before I left there, we were working through this process as well. So they have one that's adopted. The other good thing about a complete streets policy is it does look good on grant applications.
Yeah.
So when we're applying for grants, whether it's through the state or the feds, we can state that we do have a complete streets policy, and that does score points on a lot of grant applications. So that's very, very helpful when they're really competitive grants. So, Aaron, do you have anything to add on that or no? So basically what we'd be looking for tonight is just approval and forward on to council for review.
Okay, thank you for that summary. Do you have either any comments, or you serve on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee? Thank you.
Right. I was just going to move to approve, and then we could have discussion.
second.
Sure. Okay. We have a motion and a second to accept and forward the Complete Street Policy for our city. Any discussion on the item? Okay, looks like good general goals and aspiration, and put some teeth in it that then our staff can present
Right.
to incoming developers, people who are doing projects in our city will know these are our guidelines. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We don't have any specific items mentioned, but we're going to have a project update or two here. Go ahead.
Third Street Hill.
Oh.
Aaron, you want to take it? You know the latest and greatest.
Yeah, so they have finished the retaining wall, which is nice. They are completing the pouring of the barrier, so that's kind of on the top of the retaining wall is a concrete barrier, you know, instead of a guardrail. So they're gonna pour that at the end of the week. Our substantial completion date is this Friday, so we're working with the contractor. They have paved the base course almost all the way to the project limits. The rain, I guess, kind of limited them from completing it all the way. So they would like to get in with the wear course as well. So at the end of this week, it'll look like, you know, almost complete. And then they'll have a few more weeks to do the finishing touches on like turf establishment, doing the striping, putting up the signage, which we do have a sign actually that lists the weight restrictions for the trucks. So that's already, that's in the plan. So all of that, it'll be wrapped up here pretty soon.
And so does it not get opened until like all the lines are painted and all of that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that technically someone now could probably drive through, but I think while they're still doing the concrete work, it is limited, yeah. So I guess when we say it's open up to traffic, all the way would be when the striping goes in.
Okay, so you'll keep the barriers there until then?
They didn't, like just down here,
Right.
yeah, yes.
Okay.
Great, that's good to see that coming along. All right, do you have any other project updates, storm reports or anything?
Storm reports.
of the
Yeah,
month.
we can do storm reports.
Say
It wouldn't be a month without one.
Yeah,
Didn't go for that.
Exactly.
Like storm reports.
so the grinding company moved in last Friday. They started grinding the brush pile up at Grandview Park today. They figure it's going to take 2 to 3 days for them to get in and out of there. So for any residents that are watching this, the dump is closed, so we're no longer taking any more debris. And so with that, after they're complete, I'll get the invoice and then I'll package everything together, all the contracted services, staff time, equipment time, and I'll put it in a nice package and send it off to the state, to the Wisconsin Disaster Fund for reimbursement. Same program that we applied for this April. 70% of the total costs are refunded back to the city, and the city has to encumber 30% of those costs. Right now, it's looking at approximately between staff time, equipment, and contractual services, about $115,000 to $125,000
Is the city
Total.
responsibility?
that's
Is
the total.
That's the full.
30% of that.
So 30-some thousand.
Yep. Compared to the April storm, we had approximately $250,000 in expenses on that one.
And so the city expense with that was roughly 75,000. Okay, and so as you're thinking
My
about budget?
budget's blown out of the water.
Yeah, as you're thinking for budget for next year, is that something you're going to?
I am incorporating some
Okay.
increases to our urban forest, and just because of the just general conditions of our ash trees that are hitting that death curve,
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot more die. So that need to be taken care of. So that's a storm update. The other thing is Sir Lines-A-Lot has been in the community this last week and completed our road marking project. So as you drive up Crestview or Cooley or Carmichael or Hanley, you'll notice that all the lines are nice and bright. And so we did go with the more expensive option, the epoxy, which we should get 3 to 5 years out of that. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. And obviously I made notes of when it went down and if it's worth it the next go around to do that, or just go with the latex like we normally done. And so our crews are out painting every day, continuing. They were down to only 30 gallons of white and they were out of yellow, so approved them to go get some more paint, but it's something that we're obviously gonna have to look at next year. I did put in the budget to increase contractual services to bring a company in again and do some other roads throughout the community, and increasing our paint budget for our staff. So lots of lines and arrows and crosswalks in the community for sure. That's that's all I
Which
got.
is part of the traffic calming. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something in the toolbox is to paint more.
Yeah.
And I know that you even mentioned, we talked once last week about availability of paint.
Yeah.
Has been difficult.
It has been, yep.
So our
We were
budget is
we were
tapped.
lucky enough to pre-buy a lot of our supply this year. And so we didn't have to worry about that, but, this last go around, when I approved some more money to go towards paint, we did have a little bit of a problem finding it, but we were able to find some.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate that. Did you have anything else for an update, Erin? Okay, thank you.
No, no.
Sure.
We'll go with the next one, yeah.
So then, for our next meeting, communications or items for next agenda, we're going to talk about the 2024 alley reconstruction projects. Did either of you have something else that you wanted to bring forward or discuss?
Not at this time.
I would like to talk about the Public Works Facility project going forward at our next meeting, so we'll have that as an agenda item in September. Okay, so we've worked through this, been a productive meeting, a long meeting. My hat's off to you guys, you sat through all of this. At any rate, unless there's anything further,
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you, we are adjourned. Thanks so much.